In September of 1991, Captain Bill Nagel and a group of deep air divers diving from the dive boat Seeker locate a site 60 miles off the coast of New Jersey. And what we find in 230 feet of water is a German U-boat from World War II. But which U-boat is it? That was the question. What we wanted to do was identify the submarine and identify the crew that was still aboard. Right now I'm on this video in the area of the control room, and I'm going to be moving forward through this hatchway into the area on the right-hand side, the sound room and the radio room. To the left is the captain's quarters. And as I move forward, I'm going to be into the officers' quarters. This video was shot 9 months after the discovery in June of 1992. I am diving by myself. I'm diving with trimix. And already at this stage of diving on the wreck, there's been one fatality before this season is out. We're going to have another 2 fatalities. This was a very serious dive. And now I've moved beyond the galley. I'm up into the non-commissioned officers' quarters. The previous year, although we'd only had a few dives on the wreck at this point, right in this area is where I found the dishes that identified it as a German U-boat from World War II. On the bottom of the bowls, they had the eagle and swastika in the year 1942. This is also the area where I recovered the dinner knife with the name Horenberg on it. And there's a lot of debris in this area, and it's piled up rather high, so it leaves very little room over my tank. So you're kind of, dragging your stomach along the bottom and bumping the tanks along the top. And this area opens up into the non-commissioned officers' quarters and the hatch that leads to the forward torpedo room. And that's actually my purpose on this dive. Over the winter, we developed information, we looked at photographs, we did research, and we found that some of the torpedo tubes had a tag at 12 o'clock, very specifically identifying the U-boat by its number. So this is as far as I'd gotten the previous year. I'm still in the non-commissioned officers' quarters, and I'm looking to move through this hatch and take a look at these torpedo tube hatches. Moving through these hatches, they're not that restrictive, but in the case here, you can also see there's some debris, and that kind of makes it interesting as you're moving around inside the wreck. But this is the first time I've been to the forward torpedo room. No one else has been in here since the boat was sunk during World War II. I'm going to try and be as cautious as I can. On the right-hand side there, you're going to see one of the torpedoes that was just laying in storage on the bottom. There's another one on the left-hand side under that big pile of debris. There's not a whole lot of room in here to move around. There's also no water flow down in here, so it's stagnant water. Above, we've got these 2 rails that they used for rigging the torpedoes. Each of those rails weighs about 600 pounds. We've got all kinds of cables, wires, all sorts of entanglements, and we got lots of silt. As we come up on these torpedo tubes, you can just start to see now the 2 upper hatches, inner hatches, on the upper torpedo tubes. This is the port upper torpedo tube here. I'm very disappointed in that I can see that the tags that I'm looking for have been completely disintegrated. They were made out of white pot metal. You can also see some other plastic tags on there in black and white giving basic warnings and directions to the men handling the torpedo tubes. The 2 lower torpedo tubes are completely buried in this soft silt. So right now I'm trying to get turned around. It's not easy. I'm having trouble with the cables, and you can see as I put the camera down, you can see what a mess this silt is. And I get turned around, and I'm heading out. Now, when you're diving inside a submarine, you can't really get lost. It's a pipe. It's one way or the other way. Uh, it can be an intimidating environment, but at the same time, the real danger is entanglements. Right now, I'm taking the camera and I'm trying to look at the inside of the bulkhead here because we saw from the U-505, the museum U-boat at the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago, that there were pictures and there were some tags attached to these filters, valves, appliances mounted on the bulkhead wall. I couldn't really see. The camera is seeing much better than I am. But on my way out, I'm trying to take advantage of the fact that maybe something will turn up on the video when we get topside that will lead us to ultimately identify the wreck. And of course, as I'm trying to make my way out, I'm trying to be aware of where I am. Philosophically, you want to be the little church mouse and go in and out without disturbing anything. You don't want to act like a freaking monkey bouncing off the walls. And every time I stop here, it's usually because I got some kind of problem or I'm hung up or I've got to adjust something. And now I'm making my way through the galley and I'm coming back out into the officers' quarters. And one of the things that we found was that sometimes it's a little bit easier to travel on one side of the wreck than the other. And of course, that was one of the lessons I'm learning right here. In that now I'm tangled up. I've got a little bit of an equipment problem here, so I've dropped the video camera down while I sort out a little housekeeping issue. But even though the officers' quarters not very far inside the wreck, there was just a lot of cables and entanglements. And the starboard side of the wreck was much better to travel on than the port side of the wreck, and here you can kind of see why. Now, once I get out of the overhead, what I'm doing is getting out into the area of the control room. Now, what we found when we got to the site was that the area of the control room, the pressure hull is almost blown completely away above and on the port side. The pressure hull on the starboard side is still there, but it's badly fractured. So there was a terrific explosion in the area of the control room. Now this is the hatch that I came through originally when I started this video, and when I get back outside there, I'm going to be out of the overhead and into the control room. And what we find in the area of the control room, we've got a lot of the duct work from the snorkel. The snorkel was the thing that provided air to the diesel motor so the submarine could operate. And that's some of the snorkel ductwork in there. The submarine could operate when it was submerged on diesel motors. Also in this area, we've got two periscopes. We've got the horizon periscope for looking at targets. We've also got the aerial periscope for checking the sky for Allied aircraft before they surfaced. But this area, there's a tremendous amount of damage. There was all sorts of things. The conning tower is off in the sand on the port side. We really had a lot of trouble trying to just put together what was going on here. Now, I just dove forward all the way to the forward torpedo room. Of course, the other option is to move aft through the diesel motor room and the electric motor room. That's where this hatch leads. And of course, as we look at this, we've got lots of debris blocking it. It's the same hatch, but there's cables, entanglements, and all sorts of things. It certainly doesn't look any more inviting than anything on the forward end of the submarine. But that's the route we'd have to take to actually identify the U-boat 5 years from now. This was my first trimix dive on the U-boat. And I kind of have to laugh to myself because right now as I'm looking at the video, I put 2 strobe lights on my stage bottle here by the anchor line. So I guess I was somewhat nervous. Howard!